It's kind of like the thief on the cross is usually how I think of myself in the beginning. You know, he didn't have all the knowledge of what Jesus was and who he was. He's hanging next to the Son of God, and he turns and looks at him and says, "Remember me when you enter your kingdom." And Jesus looks at him and said, "Today I assure you, you will be with me in paradise." And paraphrasing, but that was it. I just knew that there was something to this Jesus, and that if I was ever going to stand before God, it was going to be solely because of Jesus Christ. That was my cling, my only hope. That's all I had. Well, I grew up in a broken home. My mom, she raised me. Her and most of my grandparents. Had some rough times when I was a kid. My mom kind of went through a rough patch there, and my grandparents kind of took over, which was a gracious thing. We didn't have to go somewhere awkward or weird. With that being said, my grandparents living in their home, they were a part of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'd say most of my childhood into my early teens. My dad's side of the family, they were Roman Catholics. That was kind of what influenced me growing up as far as a knowledge of God, but it didn't really have too much of a impact on my life because it wasn't really a strict thing. It was more of, this is kind of what we're affiliated with. But there was a lot of anger and a lot of hate from the things I'd gone through as a kid. You know, I was extremely frustrated with both of my parents, and it was intense, you know, growing up through the lifestyle that I did. A lot of anger. That kind of marked me leading into my adult life. I was very, very angry with the life that I grew up in. But as I went into my teenage years, that anger started to manifest itself in sexual desires. You know, I got introduced into pornography very, very, very young, and that took a deep root into my life. So, you know, I was pretty much who I was. I was marked by my desire to fill my appetite. So luckily at about this time, I did run into Amanda Tucker's younger brothers, Zach and Caleb, and we started running around together and found out we had a common interest of rodeoing and traveling and going to bull rides and stuff like that, which was fantastic because Ryan and Jesse, Amanda and them's mom and dad, were devoted Christians, and they really tried to wrangle us wild bunch and present us the gospel and teach us that everything we were doing was wrong and to turn to Jesus. But none of it stuck. I didn't care. So as I was going into my senior year, me and my mom had a knockdown drag out, and I was like, well, I'm making enough money to have my own place, do my own thing. I was like, I'm not, pulling my own weight in the world and then coming home to mom and being told what to do. So I just moved out and lived in my truck for, I don't know, a year and a half or something like that. Just lived in my vehicle, floating from couch to couch. But in all of this, I'm just drinking excessively. Pornography and pursuit of women is at an all-time high, and it is, So around 22, going into 23, me and Zoe got together. We started partying together, and we started partying with friends that we knew, and slowly but surely the being drunk every day started to slow down with Zoe in my life. I guess there was a little bit of stability. She's been a rock. I mean, she's just been solid through our entire relationship. She's always been there to catch me when I fall, and that little voice of conscience that I didn't have then. But I woke up one day, and the reality of my direction of hell, destruction, just really became all-encompassing. It consumed a lot of my thoughts. God brought me to a point that I couldn't move left or right without, you're going to hell. Like, no doubt. Like, it just felt like I had just the weight of the world on me, just grinding me into the ground. So one day I was just, talking to Zoe. I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. Like, it is bothering me that I am condemned. Like, it is tearing me up inside. So she was like, well, we used to go to church over at so-and-so, maybe we can go there. I'm like, okay. I'm like, people go to church for a reason, some sort of a reason. Like, maybe if I can go get a little church and I can feel better. That's kind of the mindset. Go get a little church in you, and this thing will ease off. So we started going to church there, and it was nice, and the people were nice, and there's preaching going on and stuff like that. But it took about a year of going to church, and I'd finally bits and pieces here and there in the preaching, and then things that I'd learned with Jesse and Brian, in my teenage years. Some of those things started to come back to memory. There was just enough preaching to come to the realization that Jesus Christ died for sinners. And my only thought process was, if there is ever any hope to be reconciled to God, this is it. Like, Jesus is it. That's my only hope, my only desire. That's all I got. The purpose of Jesus dying, was so that you could find forgiveness and reconciliation to God. And I don't remember how or what I was searching, but I ran across Paul Washer in a sermon. The title was, "What is the Gospel?" But for about a week, I listened to this thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. And when I get home from work, and after listening to it, I'd go and read all the scriptures that he was talking about. And finally, about the third, fourth day, something like that, it clicked that Jesus is what secures you. Jesus has paid it all. It is in Him that our salvation is founded, grounded, secured, and kept. And at that moment, it was so liberating. It was a measure of freedom had finally come. And then at that point, now victory was really starting to take off. There was really starting to be victory over anger. There was really starting to be victory over sexual sin. There was really, all of this was really, because I was grounded. When you're secure, you have freedom to try. That freedom to try is what we receive. You're free to now try to live for God without fear of condemnation of falling short. And that was just glorious. It was such a day. I'll never ever forget the day. I wish I knew the date. But just pulling over on the side of the road and just basking in Jesus' glory. Just thinking, yes, like Jesus is our all in all. Jesus isn't all we need. Jesus is all we have. And it's just, what a day. It was so liberating. I don't have one of those, somebody showed up and started preaching the gospel, and then, today was the day. Or there was no life-altering event that steered me to God. It was all about Him. He was constantly moving into my mind and my conscience. Constantly, you are not right with me. Just an overwhelming feeling. You are not right with me. All the way through my ability to understand who I was and what I was doing. But through that, God just constantly is pursuing His people. He will never stop pursuing His people. We can buck up against Him, we can do a lot of things, but if God has so graciously decided to call you into His kingdom, God will bring you into His kingdom.